Splendid to see you all, even though I can't see any of you. Splendid to see myself on the camera. Hello, welcome to Fieros, the being. Okay, man. I have shorter hair. Welcome to the shorter hair. If you haven't seen The Last Jedi, those little porgs, or at least the trailers for The Last Jedi with those little porgs. Oh man, those things are amazing. The rest of the film's terrible. The only good bit is when those porgs squeal. Because it's just the one bit of light relief that's not terrible. Oh, there are other bits of light relief. The whole thing is full of terrible, terrible, terrible jokes. But this bit is amazing. And it actually feels quite emotional when they do it. It's like, yes, because it just adds to the intensity of whatever battle, whatever battle thing they're going through. Oh, yeah. You know, I don't know what I used to do when I had this feeling before I did videos. The feeling is of needing to express myself, needing to offload energy. I'm feeling a bit weighed down, if I'm honest with you. But this house has suddenly become slightly tidier because I went on a rampage and made it extremely messy on purpose. So that, now there used to be bags all over the floor there. That whole floor bit had a load more shit on it. Alright, it needs a hoover. But this area here as well, it's actually clearer than it was before, believe it or not. Even though it still looks like a mess. But yeah, even this looks slightly more ordered. This pile of things is slightly more ordered. So my mum has said, this pile still to go through to help. Would you make time to vacuum here in the playroom? I've had a little blah blah. Yeah, because basically the whole room has been a tip for ages, and it's mainly my mum's fault because she doesn't tidy things up. Like this room, there are, I don't know how many of my own items there are in here in this room. I don't think any of these things actually belong to me. This is all stuff of my mum and some stuff of my dad, but my dad hasn't been here for ages. So it's all my mum's stuff, and it's all a fucking mess. And anywhere else that there is mess in the house, apart from my bedroom, it's my mum's mess. Okay, I've got two little bits of mess. One over in the corner there to do with music stuff, and one over here at the moment. I don't mean here and here, but like just outside in the other room, which has got like some paint and stuff there. But other than that, it's like my mess is really, really minimal because I tend to just get rid of things that I don't need because they clutter up the mind and they clutter up the environment, the space that you're in. So just get rid of stuff you don't need because they're just weighing you down there. It's just extra information in your mind that you don't need. Because if you're not using an item, if you're not genuinely enjoying looking at an item, if it has even got negative associations to it, it's just weighing you down, man. Like, get rid of that shit. Get rid of stuff you don't need. I just got rid of a whole load of DVDs yesterday because no one ever watches them. I've watched them all the way through. Let's get rid of them. Sold them to CEX for like £7.50 in total. Yeah. So I think overall we're in a bit of a culture of hoarding and consuming, aren't we? So in a way it's good that the whole digital culture has come along because there's less tangible physical objects being made and thrown away because things are more digital objects and you can throw them away by just composting them in the recycle bin. Whatever. I don't want to make too many big claims right now, because normally I start talking about society and I end up just making wild, sweeping generalizations, and it just makes me sound like the drunk at the end of the bar. So, whatever. Today I've been snezzing. I got a new snez. I snezzed it. I've snezzed it up. It's a SNES Mini. SNES Mini Classic. It's so cute. It's like a little baby. Really though, I did want into like a big one. I would have loved to have a real old school SNES with the cartridges that you jam them in there and you blow on them if they don't work, and you turn it on and then you turn it off and you press the reset, and you can't save anything in quite a lot of the games, so you have to start from the beginning every time you play it. Yeah, I miss the proper old schoolness of it, but they're really expensive, and I haven't actually found anywhere that does them cheap, because I guess they're really rare now, the original ones. Like I looked on eBay for a SNES actual proper, the first one that they made, not the mini one. Let's put in SNES. Oh, this one's like $69.97. Super Nintendo SNES console and games, and it's an old, proper old one. Oh, so why am I saying they're really expensive? Why did I not get one? There is a problem with them though, but because they're old, they don't work as well anymore. Well, there's a fear. Certainly, I've got a fear that it's just not going to work. Yeah, and the whole blowing the cartridge, you blow it as much as you like and it still ain't going to work. So I don't really want to get that and have it malfunction. Yeah. So whatever, I made my choice. Plus, if I want to get extra games, it means I have to pay for them, doesn't it? But this one's got 21 games built into it already, so I'm happy with that situation. At the moment, because the 21 games are fucking loads. It's loads to be getting on with, honestly. I've barely scratched the surface of the games, and I've had it for like 4 days. And yeah, it's going to take fucking forever to get through the whole thing. I sound like it's a chore. It is a chore in a way, but it's an enjoyable chore, do you know? It's like, I want to get through all 21 games. I want to complete them all in all the difficulty modes. And it's fun. It's fun doing it, but obviously the goal aspect of it is like, that's a lot of work to do. That's a lot of putting in the time and pressing the buttons and looking at the screen. So that's what I mean sometimes when I say about don't get too over goal orientated, because the more goal orientated you get, the less you enjoy it. So, you know, yeah, have the goals, but be more chilled about it all. Be more chilled about attaining them. Pardon me. I should probably get back on with the Fieros story time thing, but I don't feel like doing it just now. I did loads and loads and loads of videos for ages and ages and ages and ages. Well, it felt like ages anyway. It's probably only about 4 weeks, but it felt like ages and ages. And honestly, I cannot be asked. And there's a part of my brain that it's just not. It won't even bring up any ideas for me to talk about Fieros story time. I think the last thing we were speaking about in those stories was. See, there's nothing in my brain to talk about it. I will pick it back up, because I have to get to a certain point in the time period that I was describing in order to feel satisfied that I've told the whole story, because I pretty much want to get it up to the point of 2013 when I came off antidepressants, because that's a kind of marking point that marked the end of my journey with the mental health team, mental health services. So all the stuff that I was talking about previous to that with the different relationships that I was in, and then leaving those relationships, and then going to America, and then we haven't quite come out of America yet in the story. Yeah, but it leads to me ending up in a psychiatric ward, and then being medicated and being on medication for another 5 years or so. And that was really cool the way I did that. And then the actual stuff came out of my mouth as I did the hand gesture, which is pretty cool. Maybe I should do that. Just collect the thinking, and throw it out there. Yeah, so I ended up in a psychiatric ward and then medicated for ages, and then my life slowly started to change for the better, but it very, 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 very slowly. And then the end of that 5-year period was around my birthday in 2013, and then December 2013, because my birthday's in November. So beginning in 2014 was a real sort of disjunct, like a junction, a disjoint, a next phase beginning. So we had kind of, we could call it the pre-hospital phase. So we could have like from the age of 18 to I hate years and ages. Let's go from there. Oh fuck, 2004 to 2008 would be pre-hospital years, which is 4 years of pre-hospital adult life. Then we have 2008, which is a little chunk of that. A few months was in hospital, 2.5 months. But then there was a bit here and there as well. So we'll say a few months worth of hospitalization stuff going on in there. Which actually sounds quite bad. When you say that I was in hospital for like a couple of months or a few months, 3 months. Like in total roughly 3 months, yeah. I was in hospital for 3 months. Hospital. You know, if someone told you they're in a hospital ill for 3 months, not with mental health problems, but with any illness of any kind, that if you tell them I was in hospital for 3 months, you'd be like, oh, wow, that sounds like that was a long period of time to be in hospital for. Some people go into hospital for like an operation and then they come out. Some people go into hospital because they're acutely ill, but they recover after a few weeks, so like 2 or 3 weeks or something. So yeah, I was in hospital for 3 months. And there are people who were in that hospital for like 14 months, I remember someone saying. There was people who were in there for long-term hospitalization, at which point it just feels like a prison. I mean, it kind of feels like a prison anyway, because you're not allowed out there, because it's a psychiatric ward. And one of the reasons that you're in there is that you're a danger to yourself or to other people, but because of your behavior and how you are and stuff, and what you do and what you say is somewhat antisocial. Whether it's antisocial just because no one understands what the hell you're going on about, or if it's antisocial because you're aggressive and annoying, or whatever the case is, or if you're self-harming, or if you're just not it's not wise for you to be in the wider world, shall we say. Yeah, so it's still 3 months is quite a long time to be in hospital. I feel it certainly felt like a long time to be in there when I was there. So we could have that 2008. We'll just block that off as a hospital year, and then so like 2009 to 2013, or 2008 to 2013, whatever, man. Like, let's not get too crazy, because I'm winding myself up trying to figure out the dates. Shit. 2009, that's a whole year. 2010, that's a whole year. 2011, that's a whole year. 2012, that's a whole year. 2013, yeah, motherfuckers. 5 years where I was depressed, severely, like suicidally, constantly considering suicide. I never actually made any attempts, but I wasn't even close to be honest. But it was a constant rumination on suicide over and over and over again, and I just never made any attempts. In a way, I feel sort of like maybe I should have made some attempts, because other people who I know have been suicidally depressed and made attempts, and I never made any attempts. Yeah, and I feel like that separates me out from other people who experience suicidal depression for some reason, because the majority of people who I know who have been through suicidal depression have made attempts, and I just never made attempts. I felt all the feelings, and I had all the suicidal thoughts over and over again, and I was in this horrible pit of it, and I was considering suicide as to how to do it, very often, like every day, many times a day. Like, for example, crashing my car into the, whatever that fucking barrier is called, the middle barrier, crashing my car into oncoming traffic, stepping out into oncoming traffic, stepping out onto a train line. Never really consider hanging, because I just felt like that. It's just, I didn't consider hanging, but it was an idea that popped in, yeah. If I had a gun, I would have been quite happy to blow my brains out at some points, I imagine. Painkillers, I didn't stockpile painkillers, but I did know people who started stockpiling painkillers, and people who have taken overdoses. The amount of people who I know who have taken, tried to take their own life, many. That's weird, actually. I don't know. I guess it's because, having been through the system, the mental health system, it
puts you in touch with lots of other people who have been through similarly distressing situations. So it just becomes kind of like you, or let's say I have become aware that human suffering is much more rife than it may appear if you're not in contact with it a lot. So I was in contact with it and have been in contact with it a lot. People with mental health problems, I don't shy away from them unless they're really, like, if it's going to affect me by hanging around with them, then I will. But yeah, so I feel like it's given me a perspective on life, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so back to the timeline of things. So we've got that first chunk of 4 years where things were starting to go more and more wrong in my life, and I was starting to feel worse and not being able to handle life very well, and then culminating in hospitalization. Not to say that there wasn't a lot of good stuff in there as well, in terms of adventures and fun and learning and relationships and pleasure and joy and things like this as well. There was a hell of a lot of good stuff in that period. But in terms of being able to handle and live a socially acceptable life, I was not being very good at that for a while. And then we had the hospital thing again, as I say, for a few months, but let's just say it blocks out a whole year in 2008. Then we got 2009 to 2013, which was a period of I try and say recovery, but it wasn't really recovery. I feel like my recovery began in 2013. 2009 to 2012 was a kind of, I don't know if it's recovery. Recovery doesn't feel right because I didn't really have any feelings during that period. It was a numb period emotionally. And my life was quite safe. My life was quite cozy. Cozy sounds like it was pleasant. It wasn't pleasant. Cosseted is a word. It's where you, like, smothered in cotton wool, basically, by medication and my life situation. So my family was smothering me in cotton wool by, like, my mum was still cooking my food, my mum was still doing my laundry. You know, it was very dependent. It was quite a dependent, codependent life there, where I was enmeshed with my family a lot, and I was playing, my depression was taking on a role in the family. So me being ill and me having been ill was this identity that was becoming a defining feature of who I was. And it was how I worked in the family as well. I was the depressed one, which seemed to give the other people in the family, it meant that they just focused more on their external lives and the doing of things, and I was more of the internal person to focus on the feelings of things. and the inner processing. So I went deep, and everyone else stayed on the surface, because if I went deep, then they didn't have to go deep. Something like that, anyway. Yeah, and so during that period of time, I started off very, very, very depressed, suicidally, considering suicide for ages and ages. I guess this is a Fieros storytime video. Well, I may as well. Yeah, it is. So obviously now, if you look, it's on the title. You've clicked on it. It was on the title, but I didn't know it was going to be that. But yeah, it is that now. Okay, so yeah, and then where am I? So the period of depression to begin with, after coming out of hospital, I realised that we haven't gone into the hospital stuff yet, and I think there's a reason for that, which is that it's probably too traumatic still for me to delve into it right now, and we still have to finish off stuff that happened in America, and I have to talk about this very strange period in time, which was the bridge between me being in America and me ending up in hospital, that's probably the most amorphous period of time for me in my memory, because everything was I was in that state of spiritual God consciousness. I felt like the whole world was vibrating around me. It was a very psychedelic feeling, and you would probably call that the most intense psychosis period. From an external perspective looking in, you would see that I was extremely dysfunctional. But for me, that was the period where I felt that I was most spiritually connected, to a level that the people around me couldn't understand. And that was the point that led eventually to me being sectioned successfully. I didn't find it successful, but I would say it was a successful sectioning. And then I got put in hospital, which is the correct one, hospital. I mean, I did get arrested and put in a overnight jail cell thing, which was traumatic in itself. So there's more stuff to go into there, which I will try and do that in order. And I just want to give more of an overview of the whole thing at the moment. And the latter stuff is easier to talk about because it's more clear what was going on, and there was less happening overall. Whereas in the hospital period itself, and also the end of the America, is quite difficult to talk about because some stuff happens there that's tricky. And then the bit when I come back from America is again very full of excitement in terms of drama and trauma, and just difficult shit to talk about. It's difficult to talk about, I guess, because of the emotionality of it, but also just to remember what exactly happened and in what order, because of all the drama of it, and the trauma of it, it's all a bit murky and muddled in the back of my memory. You know, it's not easy to describe things and to put a linear chronological order to it all. So yeah, tricky stuff. So let's talk about a bit that happened after hospital, because I can talk about that now and it's easier to talk about that. So let's do that while I can do it. Yeah, are you happy with that? No more justification. I'm going to do it anyway. So yeah, I came out of hospital. We went straight away on holiday to France, which is actually where my dad is going on Monday, to this friend of a family's house that they rent out to people. Yes, I said that really well. Some friends of the family, they have a house and they rent it out to people, and we used to go there like every summer when we were kids. Me and my brother were kids. When the family was young, we used to go there every summer pretty much. Yeah. And my dad's going there on Monday, but I was actually invited, and he even bought me a ticket, but I eventually just pulled out and I said, look, I just don't feel ready for it just yet. Partly it brings back memories from just coming out of hospital, which is a shame because it's a lovely place. It's a beautiful place. But also I still feel a sense of being trapped. I don't want to go anywhere too far away from home where I feel like I can't get back here. I still feel like I need to be here. because I've spent such a lot of my time being in difficult circumstances away from home, that one of the feelings that I get from being at home is just feeling safe. So whether it's having difficult experiences outside, in the streets busking, or being in fights or whatever it was, or if it's being in America and being sexually abused, or what's the word, not harassed, assaulted, sexually assaulted, or being homeless, having no home, the feeling of floating and jumping from place to place and not having a home is like, it's a very unsettled feeling that I get if I stay away from home for too long, because I just had such a feeling of homelessness for such a long period of time, that when I was actually homeless, and just for the fact of being bounced around or bouncing around from place to place for such a long period of time, gave me this unsettled feeling, like deep in my soul, if you like, that I was cold, battered, and needing rest. And so being at home for me at the moment feels like something I missed out on, because I was going off and adventuring and having difficult experiences, but also adventures. That was all tied into that. So being out and about in an adventuresome way, and having difficult relationships outside of the home, was like, gave me this kind of real need to like anchor back and stay in, come back to home and just stay in home for a long period of time, to just like regenerate the feeling of safety and homeliness and comfort, because I'd been so uncomfortable and so bounced around from place to place, that at the moment I just feel like I don't want to, as much as I would love to be on holiday and love to go somewhere else, I feel like I'm still soaking up this feeling of being at home, this feeling of like not very much drama, hardly any drama going on. Just it's just calm. It's just relaxed. I'm not going on any adventures. I'm not doing anything manic. No one's hurt me. No one's even insulted me, for ages. I've not had a dramatic relationship for ages. Nothing bad has happened for ages, and I've really needed that. And to just go on holiday, as much as it would be a beautiful thing to do, it feels like I don't know. I'm just not ready for it. I'm just not ready for it. I don't want to give myself any change that will be potentially difficult for me to deal with at this point in time. If I'm going to do stuff like that, then I'm going to feel like strong and powerful. And I know when that's the right thing for me to do something else, to take the next step. I'm quite confident and trust myself that I know inside when my next thing to do is. Like this coming home thing came as a knowing that I need to stay home now. Like, that I need to stay home because I've done so much of the outer stuff, that my body and my soul and my spirit was calling to me to say, right, now is the phase to be at home. Because you've experienced so much out there, that what you need to experience is being in and calm. You need to rejuvenate for the next outgoing phase. So I'm enjoying it. I'm playing a lot of SNES, as I was saying. So let's get back to what I was saying. Came out of hospital, right? Went on holiday. I didn't want to go on holiday because I just wanted to be at home during that period of time. I'd been in hospital for like 2.5 months. I thought I was never going to get out of there. I thought I'd never be free. I thought I'd never really get back home again. I thought I was going to be stuck in this, effectively, what was a prison for the rest of my life. I genuinely believed that, because there are people who were in there who ended up, that was the last place they were before they died, because they were old and they had the mental health problems, whatever. So it just gave me this feeling of being trapped and not in contact with my normal life, and wanting to get back to my normal life, wanting to get back to my bed,
wanted to get back to my room, back to the things that I like to do, back to a place where there are not crazy nutter people walking around like zombies in the ward on the corridors and stuff, and throwing tables around. So I came out of there and I just really wanted to go home, but my parents felt like it was, I guess they'd already planned me to go on holiday. So I'm a little bit annoyed. I was annoyed at them that they just took me straight away on holiday when I was like, look, I want to be at home. I just want to be at home. I've been in this hospital, and then the next thing that you've done is take me further away from my home on this holiday. So for me, it was a continuous period, basically, of being hospitalized, which was 9 weeks, and then a holiday for 3 weeks, like straight after, where I'd only had a few nights here and there staying at home on leave from hospital, maybe a couple of nights or a week or something, I don't know, a few days being officially discharged from the hospital, and then on a 3-week holiday. So it just felt like a continuous period, basically, from like being incarcerated, I call it incarcerated, being incarcerated in the hospital ward, psychiatric ward, for those 9 weeks, with little breaks where I got to come home for a few hours at a time, and then eventually I got to stay, like, I think it was like stay overnight and then just go back the next day or something, whatever. Like, it just felt like 9 weeks of being away from home, pretty much being trapped in this environment where I had no freedom to leave, or very limited freedom to leave, and just seemingly no influence over my situation either. So I had that 9 weeks, and then another situation where I felt like I had no influence over my situation, which was being on holiday, where I was again trapped in a different environment. So I was not at home. I couldn't just leave, like I couldn't just get on a flight to go home because I didn't have the money, and it was a family organized thing, so they'd paid for everything, tickets, and it was the family car I was in, and it was a whole family thing. So it was a family decided thing, not a me decided thing, and it was just another situation that I felt was this feeling of being suspended out of my natural environment, and a feeling of not being at home, a feeling of craving being at home, needing to be at home, needing to be in my bed, like just needing to rest, needing to have no other people around me, needing to be by myself, but also like needing to have people take care of me who weren't fake and pretending, and I didn't actually get that either. I got my parents kind of taking care of me a bit, but honestly, my parents aren't the best. They're not the greatest loving parents in the world. Like, I've met more loving people than my parents. They're okay. They're not great. Honestly, overall, they're a little malnourished themselves emotionally, so they're kind of, they're better now than they ever have been, but previously there was more like more mental approach. So it's more like trying to figure it out mentally and logically and rationally and stuff like this, which only goes so far. More thinking based approach to solving problems, which only goes so far, as I say, and can just end up turning into arguments. Because if you're depressed, then you're having depressive thoughts, and someone's trying to get you out of it, it can just turn into an argument because they're trying to change your way of thinking, and you don't want to change your way of thinking because it's an expression of how you feel. Oh God. Okay. What else? Yeah. So I got to the holiday, and I couldn't bloody enjoy it really because I was depressed, and I couldn't enjoy anything because I was depressed, and because my mind was just constantly thinking about the futility and negativity and the pain and the fucking. There was a certain sense of meaning though in it as well, which is weird. Like I was drawing a sense of meaning from the pain and meaning from the hopelessness. That there was a bleak sense of meaning to it all, which is weird. It was like romanticizing the pain in a way. There's a sense of wistfulness about it all, that somehow this was meaningful, yet just in a very negative way. It was odd how I felt like it was both meaningful and yet disastrous at the same time. Really strange. And it feels odd to even talk about it, because it feels like I'm such a different person now that I don't think I couldn't get back to that even if I fucking tried. I couldn't get back into that mind space because I've dejunked my minds and emotions so thoroughly since then, and done so much healing and expressing and venting, and mindfulness, becoming my true self, inner child work, hypnotherapy, counseling, journal work, expressive music work, sounding, singing, drawing, writing my story, going into groups, just so much stuff. I've done so much stuff. I just don't think it would be possible for me to be depressed anymore. Then again, when my parents die, I believe that I will go into some kind of feeling of depression for a while. I can see that happening. I can see that the grief when my mum dies, especially my mum, because I've lived with her for so long, even though I have done as much grief work as I can now, and I think I will try and do some more, but our relationship is what you might call resolved. I'd say like 80% resolved, which means that you come to a sense of psychological completion or resolution in the relationship, such that you're not trying to how to describe this? I know what it is and I know what it means because I know how it feels. It's where you like no longer resent the other person anymore. There's nothing from the past that you are bringing into the present anymore. Like the past happened and it's still there, but you don't like use that against the other person anymore. Like that's not something. It's like you've done what you need to do with regard to the past, that you no longer are going to, like on their deathbed, you're no longer going to say, you should have done this. I can't believe you weren't there for me. Things like this. That you've reached a state of completion with that, so that you are okay with them and you're okay with yourself in relation to them. So it's like that. It's like I feel detached yet able to be around the person as well. I feel like I'm fully myself and able to deal with this person and have a good relationship. The way I said deal with this person does not sound like a completed feeling. Deal with this person. There is, okay, that's why I said 80% complete, all right? We occasionally have some more difficult, challenging times. But I deal with them very, very quickly in my own self. I process that very quickly, and I don't feel a lingering sense of difficulty after the fact. And with my dad as well, there's more of a sense of resolution. Maybe not as much as my mum, but there's more of a sense of resolution compared with what it was like before, basically. So, for example, I went to see him today, and normally I'd have a load of mental, stuff going on before I meet my dad and hang out with him, usually some kind of argument based on a feeling from the past or some story from the past. I had some kind of emotional stuff going on, or just a feeling of apprehension in some way. Today I didn't have that at all. No, we had a great time. Did we have a great time? We had a good conversation, and sharing honesty and a few laughs, some interesting stuff from both our lives. It feels like quite just a mature relationship, friendship with my dad. So
You know, it's not claustrophobic. It's detached. It's each other person being boundaried and taking responsibility for themselves, and yeah, so that's quite well resolved as well now. So there will be some grief, of course there's going to be grief, and I feel like my mum, I'm going to have grief. I feel like when my mum dies, it's going to be like some massive energy source is just ripped out of me, because I've just been with her for so long in my local environment, like my house, for so long, that it's going to feel like this other part of me just being pulled out from me, which I feel like overall is going to be good. Actually, that sounds shit. Oh, it's going to be great when my mum dies. Well, in a way it will be, because some of the, like, I don't know, it brings you a freedom. The grief brings a new freedom, and this might sound terrible, but it brings a new freedom. It brings a new perspective. It brings a new appreciation. It brings a new, an appreciation of that person as well, even deeper appreciation than you can achieve in life. Yeah, I mean, think about that. If you know anyone who has died, which I'm pretty sure that you're going to know someone in your family or someone in the outskirts of your life who has died and that you have known, it brings a deeper appreciation of that person. It's like you cannot appreciate the person fully until they're gone. I know that sucks, but the only way you can ever fully like appreciate someone is when they have finally reached the end of their life, because that's the end point of their life, and that's the only perspective you can have that covers the whole of their life, isn't it? And that's the only point from which you can remember everything that was so important to you about them, and all the meaningful things that happened and the experiences you went through. So the after death perspective is the one that is the richest, it's the deepest sense of appreciation for another human being. Yeah. So when my mum dies, I feel like I will have a much deeper appreciation for the positive impact that she's had on my life than I do now. I just think it's like so hard to appreciate other people when you're with them all the time, even when you're trying to appreciate them and notice them and listen to them and be there for them and cherish the time that you have. It's still hard because they are there, and you only notice something. You notice something more keenly when it's gone, the absence of something. So the heart grows fonder, absence make the heart grow fonder, all this stuff. It's like losing something or being away from something. It gives you a perspective, or when something dies, it gives you the perspective on that, whatever experience it is, or the person or place, wherever, to value it. Oh, this has gotten deep. I should have just carried on playing the SNES. Oh man. So yeah, when my mum dies, I'm gonna feel crap, but it'll bring a new, even deeper appreciation of life and a deeper appreciation of my mum. So, but the grief, I also feel like it's gonna kind of rip my whole body apart for a while. But then again, it might not. It might not. You know, you can't plan how you're going to grieve, can you? It just happens. I feel like it might go another way, which is where I just process hardcore for a while, and I'll be processing in the lead up to it as well. Like I'm constantly, I'm aware that my parents are limited in terms of their lifespan, so I'm not under any illusions that they're going to last forever. So, you know, one of the ways you can deal with grief up front, like be a spiritual badass,
is to process absolutely every interaction that you have with every single human being that you ever come into contact with in the whole of your life. And every time you have any like outgoing interactions with other people in where you're interacting with people, once that's all happened and done, and you're back at home in some kind of clear, safe, quiet space, you just process all the interactions, which means to remember what's happened and to learn any lessons that were there, or it's just a sense of kind of digesting the feeling of that. It's like it comes as like imagery and thinking, and you're thinking about what happened and like taking insight from what happened and what was said and what wasn't said, and like it's just this kind of emotional thought process and being process in the body as well, so listening to what your body is saying about it. And if you do that every day with whatever interactions have happened, and you're constantly in a state of processing your emotional experience, so becoming aware of your emotional experience and taking it inside and learning from it and listening to it, it's like kind of regurgitating what's happened, remembering what's happened, learning from it, listening to it, and then dissolving it. Eventually processing leads to that experience. The trace of the experience is the emotional trace of the experience is neutralized. So anything that was big and bad and scary or overwhelming or really, really happy, anything that was like a spike in emotion, either positive or negative, gets neutralized and calmed down and kind of dissolved. So it's like you come back to clarity, and you still have the memory of these different things, but they lose their emotionalized component, so that the next time you remember them, it's what I would call a clear or pristine clarity memory that doesn't have an overlay of an emotional turbulence to it. So if you do that every day, if you do that with every interaction that you go through, then when like bigger grief experiences happen, it's easier for you to deal with that because you've already cleared up your relationship. You've kept your relationship clean, if you like. You've kept it clean of emotional baggage as you've gone forward. So when you get to a grief point where there's a significant breakup or a death or a significant moving away, because you've already kept your relationship clean and healthy and like emotionally baggageless, and you've faced emotional stuff as it's arisen, and you've processed each event, and you've stayed true to yourself and things like this, that when you come to a large breaking point of some kind where grief is going to happen, some kind of feeling of pain or loss or separation, whatever happens, you're already in a good place to deal with that, because it's like you're dealing with what's happening now or what's just happened as a continuation of your process of always grieving or processing for the end of each little experience. So every time you go out to work, let's say, let's use going to work as an example. You go to work, you go through your day, you come home, you may be still a bit stressed from work, and you go and find a way to process that information, and you calm yourself down, and you learn from what happened in the day. You like relax yourself down, and you take any lessons from the day, and you play back the day in a way in your head, and you resolve any issues that you had against the day, which is where you're resentful against people who wronged you maybe in the day, or you felt something nagging at you, hanging over from what happened there. That like a feeling of a trace, an emotional trace, something that's lingering on once you've got home, stuff that happened at the office or happened wherever you work, and it's still there. The feeling is still there with you, and you take that as far as you can go with it afterwards, like to a place of tranquility, and you like process it down. that like makes you fresh for the next one. But if you're always taking a little bit of something from yesterday with you, then it just becomes this mountain of yesterdays behind you that you're carrying along in this giant rucksack of yesterdays. So each day you move forward in life, as the sun you know, rejuvenates its cycle and the sun comes up, you're still carrying years and years worth of tiny little niggling things. And you've got this mountain of past behind you, and the sun is going, I'm trying to bring you joy, but you're just too fucking heavy. Like, you need to process those past occasions in order to free up yourself to live here fully in the now, and to be expressive and be appreciative of the life that's around you. So yeah, I feel like it could go various ways when my parents die. I expect there's going to be some grief, but I still feel like somehow it's going to be less bad than it would have been if I hadn't gone through all this stuff. So, okay. I was trying to tell the story of when I came out of hospital. Went on holiday, didn't like the fact I was on holiday. I actually wrote a few pretty decent songs while I was on that holiday. About the experience of being in hospital. One was called Chaos, which was talking about being sectioned and the feeling that this was being imposed on me from the outside world. Yeah. No, other songs as well that I wrote. But my abiding feeling or memory from that time in a holiday was just a feeling of not wanting to be there, and it was uncomfortable to be somewhere that I didn't want to be, and I had to be there, which was part of the annoyance of it. But annoyance is too frivolous to say. It was deeper than that. It was a real craving and a longing to be back at home and to be back to normal, because I'd been so suspended from my normal life, and I'd been removed from everything that was familiar, and I'd been in situations where I had no control over things. I had no freedom. I couldn't leave, and I was yet again in another situation that I couldn't leave when I was on holiday. So yeah, and I just had to wait it out. And one of the friends of the family, different friend of the family from the ones who owned the house, yeah, I'm managing to say things quite well. This friend of the family, she suggested that I put out a row of stones or a row of nuts or a row of something, coins, something, to like mark out each day, and as each day passes I put one of them away so I can see that it's going down, like, yeah. So it starts off with however many days it was when I started it, and then take them down so I could see the thing going. And that was probably the most constructive thing that anyone had said for the whole time. It didn't really help, but it was something, you know. The other thing that I was doing there was I bought this book, like, while I was still in hospital. I got some time of leave where I was allowed to be out of hospital, and I went to town and I bought this book called The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way. Artist's Way. This sucks, man. This whole fucking hospital thing really sucks. Like, it's such a deep and dark period of my life, and to revisit it is just quite painful. It feels emotional to talk about it, because basically I was sat in a room in a hospital with no freedom, with no job, with, like, depressed as fuck, with my family who I didn't trust anymore and I didn't feel cared about me, with the system who I thought was just out to get me, who would ruin my life, with, you know, maybe no prospects. My self-confidence was shot to pieces. I felt suicidal, like I wanted to die. I felt like everything had basically gone wrong for me. And yet, and yet part of me still believed in life. And part of me was like fighting to improve things for myself and to live how I wanted to live and do what I wanted to do and follow my dreams and stuff. And like get back to some sense of happiness, I suppose. Yeah. And creativity as well. So yeah, I was pretty low and pretty isolated in this strange situation. It was not a normal situation by any stretch of the imagination, for me anyway. And so I got this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and I just started working through the exercises in there, which it sounds kind of, yeah, fine, you get a book and you do the exercises, but as I look back at it, I just see this guy who is very lonely and struggling and trying to make his life make sense and trying to get a hold on life and trying to return to like normal and trying to find a way to be happy and trying to find a way to escape the horrendous problems of his life and to make something of himself. Yeah, so it's just a pretty bleak yet it's a pretty bleak scene, and I feel for the guy because I feel like no one really cared about me in that situation. It was all systemic and systematic. It was all part of a system. So the nurses, I felt like they didn't really care because it was their job to care, right? It's like it wasn't personal. It was I could have been anyone kind of thing, you know. I could have. People were only doing their job. The whole thing was people doing their job. The police did their job to arrest me. The doctors did their job to section me. The nurses did their job to administer me the medication. You know, the cook person did their job to give me the food. My care coordinator did their job to organize various parts of my treatment plan. You know, it was very like impersonal and like just a system being absorbed and become part of a system, a little marble being kicked around in a giant system of cogs and wondering what the hell where the marble is supposed to be, like a pinball machine kind of thing. And I felt like no one really cared about me. Even I didn't feel like my family really cared about me because they couldn't really understand what I was going through. So in order to care about me deeply, they would need to be able to understand and to be able to listen to me very deeply. And I don't think they were really able to. So I guess I just felt a bit kind of lost. But then I had this real drive and passion to get back to my normal life afterwards. So I came back from the holiday. And I'd been doing this Artist's Way stuff, these exercises from there, which were things called morning pages, which is where you write 3 pages of longhand writing in like on lined paper or whatever every morning. First thing, you just write some stuff down. 3 pages, 3 A4 pages, lined paper. Just write longhand, handwriting, 3 pages. And it's like a way to just detox your mind, to just get everything out of your head, just purge your brain onto the page. And I did that. I didn't really see the benefit of it, but I did it anyway. Now that I look back on it, the feeling I get from that experience is quite good. Like the feeling of the memory is quite a good feeling. It feels like it was quite a fresh feeling to do that. Although at the time I didn't really have that same perspective. I felt like why the hell am I doing this? But I did it, and it was, I guess it was helpful. And then I took that exercise. I don't do it in the morning, but that's how I do, like, pretty much all my work starts from stream of consciousness writing or drawing. Stream of consciousness drawing is like the same kind of thing, but not writing. It's just a purge, but it's not writing, it's drawing. So all of my work is an expression of that same modality or mentality, which is just a stream of consciousness thing. Even my videos are an expression of that. So I guess that way of working kind of started there with the artist's way. I'm looking at these pictures of it, the artist's way. I will get up the picture of it here, and I'll show it to you, just so you can look at it. It says a spiritual path to higher creativity. So for me, this ticked a couple of boxes, because it says spiritual and it says creativity, and those are two things. Oh bloody hell! I hate when this happens. Okay, oh Lord, hold on. Right, I don't know what you can see. There you go. A spiritual path to higher creativity by Julia Cameron, author of The Vein of Gold. It says there, a course in discovering and recovering your creative self. Fine, whatever. Hello. Yeah, so I got that book, and that was good because it was like, oh yeah, I've always wanted something like this, a kind of workbook, an artist's workbook. And I feel like the video is coming to an end, even though I don't feel like we've really completed anything in this lesson. Lesson. Yeah, it is a lesson. It's a lesson for all of you. No idea what I'm going to say now. Okay, fine. Well, that's the end of that then. Yeah, I recommend the book. I should get it again, actually. I'm meaning to get it again, but I don't want to. It's going to bring back memories as well to read that bloody book. So I think that's one reason why I'm not getting it just yet. And also, I don't know. I should get it again. I should get the damn book again, and I should read it. I don't think I've read it all the way through. I think I kind of just read for a while, did some of the exercises, and then I went, like, you know, when you're reading a book and you just get bored of it halfway through or something, and you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. Because it's a 12-week program. I feel like I did read it all the way through, but I don't know. I get it. I'll fucking get it again. Fine, I'll get it again. So I got rid of it a long time ago. I did a de-junking thing, which I mentioned earlier. But yeah, I should get it again. Alright, I'll get it again. I got so many books to read though. Yeah. Okay. The Artist's Way. Ding ding ding. Part of the problem was that at that point in time, I wasn't really able to kind of get into that mind space that from where she's coming from. But I think that I will be able to get into it this time round. Yeah. You know, like once you mature and you go back to something, you see it in a different way, and you kind of see it from a new perspective. So hopefully I'll get more out of it this time around. Can I stop now?